8 reasons why King Charles may hate Americans. Britain and the United States of America had a special relationship, which was mostly looked after by the late Queen Elizabeth II. During her reign, she hosted 10 presidents in the United Kingdom and visited dozens of cities in the United States. This also made her very popular amongst the American public. However, after her passing, Prince Charles succeeded her to become King Charles III. King Charles is expected to maintain bilateral cooperation. However, there is evidence that he may not be fond of the Americans, and we don't clearly know where the two nations' relationship will lead. Hello, and welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we're going to tell you how Britain has been maintaining its relationship with the United States of America and the main reason why King Charles may actually hate Americans. Now let's begin. Number 8. The meeting between Prince Charles and Richard Nixon. Charles has visited America more than 20 times, but couldn't muster much enthusiasm when asked about his upcoming US tour in 2015. You would likely imagine His Highness excited, but he stated, "It's a country that I've visited many times, both officially and privately, so there's nothing much to be fond of." He even made a joke about the number of times he has traveled to the country by saying, "I think I've been 20 times or something in the last 45 years. Just shows how old I'm getting." He stated this when CNN's Max Foster asked him about his trip to the US. Maybe he thought of offering Charles an opportunity to offer some bland praise about America's spirit or whatever. Instead, the royal just confirmed the facts and made a joke about his age. A funny thing transpired. When the then President of the United States, Richard Nixon, attempted to arrange for his marriage to his first daughter, Tricia Nixon. The second amusing event that took place at the time was Richard Nixon's ordeal entertaining the 22-year-old prince. So, how did he do it? Prince Charles was apparently forced to do some things by the president at the time, which could be one reason he might despise Americans, according to a 1970 article in the New York Times. At that time, Prince Charles and President Nixon spent an hour and 20 minutes alone in an uninterrupted conversation at the White House. He was then entertained by President Nixon's son-in-law, David Eisenhower, who was working that summer as a statistician for the Washington Senators. They watched a baseball game together while he explained the differences between hits and strikes, walks and runs. Later in the day, Prince Charles watched Dr. Louis N. Locke dissect the body of a bald eagle and inquired in detail about the theory that the bird had died from organic pesticides. As he left the laboratory, the prince smiled at Dr. Locke and said, "You can eat your lunch now." Since it was the first time he had ever visited the country, this experience left a lasting impression on King Charles. Number 7. We served him tea incorrectly. After his first experience with US President Nixon, he returned to Washington in 1981 with his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, and he wasn't as thrilled as his mother. However, this time, President Reagan tried to charm him with some horse banter, since he knew that the prince during that time was very fond of riding. However, during the visit, an incident made Prince Charles frown. Now, we know how the English like their tea made, with the perfect techniques for brewing tea leaves and savoring the taste. However, this method wasn't followed in the States, and though we know that the invention of tea bags sure made things much easier, little did we know that tea bags weren't a thing for royalty. According to Reagan's diary entry, published years later in Vanity Fair, it seemed like the White House committed some tea-related offensive that got on the nerves of Prince Charles at the time. The entry in the journal stated, "A visit from Prince Charles was the highlight of noon. Prince Charles was also mentioned by President Reagan as a likable individual. However, an error occurred when the ushers brought him tea. They served the prince tea with the tea bag. To the president, Reagan referred to it as the horrors of horrors." Well, what could have gone wrong? For some who don't know, Prince Charles was a very picky eater, and he would only eat or drink something if he knew it was properly cooked or made. However, in this case, he picked up the cup, held it, and put it down on the table. When this incident happened, Mike Dever, who was the deputy chief of staff at the time, escorted him back to the White House and apologized. In the end, Prince Charles remarked, "I didn't know what to do with it." Number 6. Princess Diana danced with John Travolta. If you're not familiar with this, you should unquestionably watch one episode of the most recent season of The Crown to understand what we're about to discuss. Though some of you may believe that the prince did not particularly appreciate his princess at the time, this occurrence certainly made him appear to be jealous. We know that Princess Diana's fame overshadowed Prince Charles in a way that caused him to loathe Princess Diana at some point. But the moment when Princess Diana got the opportunity to dance with John Travolta undoubtedly topped the jealousy chart for Prince Charles at the time. The event happened when the couple returned to the White House in 1985. They were then provided a lovely meal and an opportunity to dance with John Travolta by Princess Diana. Princess Diana described the experience as a dream come true. Princess Diana was an admirer of John Travolta at the time, and she once stated that dancing with him was her dream. Sooner, they both had a dance at midnight for about 15 minutes. Though the two of time seemed to have a wonderful time, Charles was clearly miffed. When asked if Diana had liked her dance with the actor, he snarled, "Well, I'm not a glove puppet, so I can't speak for that, I'm afraid." Then, he turned to his wife and asked sternly, "But I guess you loved it, didn't you?" Wouldn't she be an idiot if she didn't love dancing with John Travolta? We could surely sense something going on here. Now, before we go on to state the other reasons, there's something you need to know about King Charles. As we know, the Queen led the monarchy through 70 years of difficult societal transformation, and it was in 1951 that she met with President Harry Truman to strengthen ties between the two countries. In 2021, she welcomed President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden for tea at Windsor Castle. However, upon the Queen's death, Biden stated in a statement that she was the first British monarch to whom people all around the world could feel a personal and instant connection. If you want to know how liked and popular the Queen was, the YouGov survey that went online this year provided the answers. It rated Queen Elizabeth as the most popular living member of the royal family among Americans, with 61% of the public having favorable views about her. However, the late Princess Diana led the surveys, with 38% of the US people having a very positive impression of her and 64% preferring her overall. But how about King Charles? Charles has a long history with the United States, and he has visited the country on official trips more than 20 times. In 1970, when Charles was just 21 years old, he made his first journey as Prince of Wales to meet with President Richard Nixon. However, when Princess Diana accompanied Charles on a visit to the United States in 1985, the British monarchy had won over the American people. The Los Angeles Times said that royal fever had spread throughout the country, with Washington, D.C., a legally democratic capital, suddenly becoming crazy about the monarchy. However, it was evident that his sons, Harry and William, would overshadow him. After Princess Diana's death, the American public started to recognize Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, now known as Queen Consort, when they embarked on their first royal trip as husband and wife in the early years of the new century. Shortly after their wedding in 2005, the couple visited the United States and met with then President George W. Bush and his wife Laura, who threw a banquet at the White House for the royals. 6 years later, in 2011, Charles is said to have met with former President Barack Obama to talk about environmental problems, a cause he has been an advocate for a long time. President Obama enthusiastically praised the prince's work on environmental concerns spanning 3 decades, preventing deforestation and boosting sustainable food production, a White House statement said at the time. However, since the death of Queen Elizabeth II, there has been a lot of worry in the press about whether or not King Charles III will be able to keep Britain's special relationship with the US. Even before she became queen, Elizabeth had been polite and smiled when she had bad experiences with almost every president of the United States, starting with Dwight D. Eisenhower. The Queen was liked for her apolitical marshmallow diplomacy by Americans, but her extremely vocal son will have his work cut out for him. King Charles is already under fire for making President Biden take the bus to the Queen's funeral. As it turned out, this was not the case, but it was not a clever opening move by Charles, who is on one of America's least loved British royals, according to a recent YouGov poll. But there is some good news. We know for a certainty that King Charles isn't only into Americans, and he has many reasons to dislike them. Not just in the way that all monarchs must loathe Americans for violating their power, but for solid reasons. And now we go on to number 5. He was addressed as Prince. How do we address the royals? Do we call them by their names or their titles? According to Brian Hoey's book, Not in Front of the Corgis, Life's Little Secrets, he said that Charles seemed irritated when an American remarked, "Hi, Prince," on an unspecified visit to the United States. British royals have many rules and etiquette that they follow, and one thing is for sure, they don't say "Hi, Prince" while meeting one another at any private or official event. One main thing from the many royal etiquette and rulebooks is to address the royal with proper titles. When Prince Charles heard this at the time, he was not amused. Hoey mentioned, saying that he instructed his private security to inform future hosts that they address him by his full title, or even a plain Charles or anything else. But definitely not, "Hi, Prince." This way, the royal rules are followed and no rules are broken. Heck, even the royal website says there are no obligatory codes of behavior when meeting a member of the royal family, but the correct formal address is Your Royal Highness, and subsequently, Sir. However, this wasn't a breach of official protocol, but it's just that he wasn't fond of how casual and careless Americans can be. Number 4. We made him chat with one of our tackiest celebrities. When it comes to royals meeting Hollywood celebrities, most of them won't know that greeting a royal is done by using the right titles, and we've also talked about the same thing in our previous points. However, this reason right here might give you a solid ground on why Prince Charles may hate Americans even more. 8 years after Princess Diana died, Prince Charles and Camilla made it official with their marriage in 2005. The couple then headed to the United States for their first official tour as husband and wife. However, on the day they arrived, they attended a celebrity-studded reception at the Museum of Modern Art, where they met some of the tackiest celebrities. Mind asking who attended? Who are we talking about? These celebrities were Donald Trump, Sting, Yoko Ono, TV newscasters Diane Sawyer and Barbara Walters, former tennis player John Enroe, actors Matthew Modine and Joan Collins, and New York Police Commissioner Raymond Ray Kelly. Together, they drank champagne and ate organic canapes with the couple. But we know that aside from Sting, who isn't even American, this celebrity roster is pretty sad. And to make matters worse, it gave the New York Post an opportunity to run the headline, Queen Camilla is New York's Frump Tower. Well, I'm sure Prince Charles saw that and didn't like it. Number 3. We made him chat with one of our tackiest presidents. If you're thinking President Richard Nixon's way of spending time with Prince Charles wasn't the tackiest one ever, then wait till you hear about King Charles meeting with President Trump. So, when President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump visited the UK in 2018, they had tea with the Queen. However, the then Prince Charles and Prince William didn't attend the meeting. Later, a source stated, they simply refused to attend. The media also saw this as a very unusual thing for the Queen to be there on her own, since she is usually accompanied by somebody. However, on that particular day, she was alone. Later, when Trump came for a more elaborate state visit the following year, Charles had to make things right. He and Camilla attended several events with the Trumps and even invited them to their London home for tea. Despite the fact that the Americans were nearly an hour late, the two couples seemed pleasant during their picture opportunity, until Camilla grinned at the reporters. According to Harper's Bazaar, Camilla was simply being kind to the photographers, but many others perceived her actions as a plea for help online. Number 2. We exposed his brother's behavior. King Charles has a brother named Andrew, and in 2011, the BBC reported that Prince Andrew was associated with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. This brought in a constant stream of criticism for the royal. Later in 2015, during a federal case filed in Florida against the American businessman, it was found that Prince Andrew had actually raped Virginia Giuffre when she was 17. This news turned out to be a problem for the royal family. Later, Giuffre initiated a legal case against Prince Andrew, and as the controversy progressed, Jeffrey Epstein, with whom he was acquainted, committed suicide in a Manhattan jail in August 2019. In February 2022, only weeks before his disposition, the prince and Giuffre reached an unspecified settlement. When Andrew asked a New York judge to dismiss the civil case in 2021, the judge denied him, costing Andrew his military titles and royal favors. How do you think this must have affected Charles, considering his own brother was a criminal offender? Well, what we know is that the Queen supported her son even through his sentencing. She even instructed all members of the royal family not to attend the memorial service in military uniforms, so that Andrew wouldn't stand out in a civilian attire during Prince Philip's memorial service. However, King Charles seems less keen on protecting his brother's image. He even exclaimed that despite the fact that Andrew would stand with his siblings during memorial services, he would be allowed to wear a uniform and then likely disappear, as if to say that he wouldn't even be a part of it. However, if these claims had not been made, they may have turned out differently. Though this may appear to be unrelated to the hatred in question, King Charles may hold a grudge against it. Number 1. We encouraged Harry to talk shit about him publicly. Though we have heard of the sexist claims about Meghan Markle and her plan to steal Prince Harry and take him back to California where she is from, which was definitely not true, there's no denying that the couple did talk about the royal family in the Oprah Winfrey Show. Furthermore, let's face it, when Meghan Markle became one of the royals, she did cry for help and asked for assistance for her mental health issues. However, this was frayed upon by the British royals, and even the press didn't offer much, apart from giving her the cold shoulder every now and then. So it was no doubt that Meghan had a lot of things to open up about, which she did on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and it wasn't just her who did, but also Prince Harry, Charles' second son. It's true that even if they had chosen a different celebrity interviewer, the explosion caused by Meghan and Harry spilling royal family tea would have been explosive. But for the interview to become truly legendary, America's queen of all media was needed, and thank goodness they didn't choose James Corden, because things may have gone further south. But the fact that Prince Harry was able to open up during the show could have given his father, King Charles, the snarl. Oprah, America's therapist at large, convinced him to calm down and open up about the royal duties and the royal family at large. So he did. Prince Harry revealed that his father, King Charles, decided to stop returning his calls to him, which made him feel like he was let down. He also mentioned many things about the royal family that shocked the world. However, we do know that all was forgiven, and even though we may have passed that phase of pointing fingers at one another, King Charles has definitely waited for the throne for many years. And despite the fact that we made his son write a memoir and expose his alleged crimes against Diana to a new generation through a Netflix series, an Oscar-nominated movie, and a terrible Broadway musical, who could blame him if he actually hates Americans? These are just what we know. If you know some, you might as well share them with us in the comments section below. If you like this video, don't forget to click that thumbs up button. Press the bell icon to stay notified because we're giving you a lot of informative content. Thanks for watching.